The day Obiajulu became the richest man in the village was the same day he signed his family's death sentence. But he didn't know it yet. And by the time he realized what he had done, it was already too late to stop feeding the shrine. In Umuakwu village, poverty wasn't just struggle, it was shame. Obiajulu knew this pain better than anyone. As a child, he watched his mother beg. He watched his father die in debt. He watched people laugh at his family like they were cursed. So he made a vow, I will never be poor again, even if I must break the earth. Years later, Obiajulu worked harder than any man in the village. He farmed until his hands bled. He traded until exhaustion took him. But every time he rose, life dragged him back down. Sickness, thieves, bad harvests. It was like something was blocking his destiny. Then came the night that changed everything. During the village festival, while others celebrated, Obiajulu sat alone, watching rich men throw money like it meant nothing. His heart burned with envy. That's when he appeared. A stranger in black cloth, eyes too calm, voice too smooth. He sat beside Obiajulu and asked, "Do you want to be rich, or do you want to be respected?" Obiajulu laughed bitterly. In this village, respect is bought. The stranger smiled. There is a shrine that grants wealth beyond imagination, but it doesn't bless for free. What does it cost? The stranger's smile widened. Only what you love most, little by little. That night, Obiajulu followed the stranger deep into the forest, past where normal men turn back, past trees that seemed to watch. They reached a broken shrine surrounded by bones. A clay pot sat in the center. Inside, coins, cowries, red feathers. The stranger handed him a knife. "Cut your thumb." Obiajulu hesitated, but shame was louder than fear. He cut. Blood dripped into the pot. The wind screamed, and the stranger whispered, "Money will follow you now. But when the shrine calls for payment, do not run." Within days, everything changed. His yams grew massive, his goats multiplied, his trades succeeded mysteriously. Men who mocked him now bowed in respect. Obiajulu built a bigger compound, married a second wife, wore expensive clothes. And worst of all, he began insulting poor people the way he was once insulted. Because greed doesn't just want wealth, it wants revenge. The village whispered, "Obiajulu is blessed by the gods." But they had no idea what was coming. Then his first son, Chukwudi, died suddenly. No sickness, no warning, just gone. Obiajulu screamed and mourned. But that night the stranger returned. "The shrine has started eating," he said calmly. "You lied to me," Obiajulu cried. "No, I told you the price. You just didn't want to hear it." The next morning, Obiajulu opened his barn and found bags of cowries stacked like mountains. His tears dried, his grief became silent, and his greed whispered, "Maybe it was destiny." One by one, the shrine took everything. His second son became violent, his wives had nightmares, people began disappearing near his compound. But Obiajulu, he stopped caring, because the wealth was too sweet, the power too addictive. He had become exactly what he feared as a child, a man who valued money more than life itself. The shrine wasn't just taking from him anymore. It was turning him into itself. By the time Obiajulu realized he had become the very curse he once feared, the shrine had already claimed everyone he loved, and now there was only one person left to sacrifice: himself. But the question isn't whether he'll survive. The question is, will he even want to? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your opinions. 6 months passed. 6 months since Chukwudi died. 6 months since Obiajulu chose the gold over his grief. And in those 6 months, Obiajulu became unrecognizable. His compound had expanded into something that rivaled even Chief Okonko's estate. Servants rushed about at his every command. His barns overflowed with yams, his pots overflowed with cowries, and his ego overflowed with pride that had turned into pure arrogance. He wore the finest coral beads, imported silk wrappers, and gold rings on every finger. When he walked through the village square, people stepped aside, not out of respect, but out of fear, because something had changed in Obiajulu's eyes. They were cold now, empty, like looking into a well with no bottom. But the worst change wasn't in Obiajulu. It was in his remaining son, Nkem. The boy who had once been sweet and playful was now different. At only 8 years old, Nkem had become violent and unpredictable. He would attack other children without warning, his small fists flying with unnatural rage. His eyes would go blank as if someone or something else was looking through them. The village women whispered, "That boy is not right. Something evil is inside him. The sins of the father are visiting the son." Adaze knew they were right. Every night, she would hold Nkem as he screamed in his sleep, thrashing and crying out words that made no sense, words in a language she didn't recognize. She tried to tell Obiajulu. "Our son is sick," she pleaded one evening, her beautiful face lined with exhaustion and fear. "We need to take him to the dibia. Something is wrong with him." Obiajulu barely looked up from counting his cowries. "The boy is fine. He's just adjusting." "Adjusting to what?" Adaze's voice broke. "His brother is dead. His father has become a stranger. This house is cursed, Obiajulu. Can't you see it?" Obiajulu's hand slammed down on the table, scattering coins across the floor. "Enough!" he roared. "I am tired of your complaints. I gave you wealth. I gave you a palace. I gave you everything a woman could want. And still, you cry about curses and sickness." Adaze stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me everything, except the man I married." She turned and walked away, leaving Obiajulu alone with his gold. That same night, something happened that even Obiajulu couldn't ignore. He was awakened by screaming. Neka, his second wife, shrieking from her room like she was being murdered. Obiajulu rushed in to find her convulsing on the floor, foam coming from her mouth, her eyes rolled back so far only the whites showed. "Neka!" He tried to lift her, but her body was rigid, frozen in an unnatural arch. Then she spoke. But it wasn't her voice. It was deep, guttural, ancient. "The shrine is hungry. The shrine wants more." Obiajulu stumbled backward, his heart hammering in his chest. Neka's body suddenly went limp. She gasped for air, her eyes focusing on Obiajulu with pure terror. What happened to me?" she whispered, trembling. But Obiajulu had no answer, because standing in the doorway, visible only to him, was the stranger. The mysterious man in black tilted his head, that same knowing smile on his face. "She's next," the stranger said simply, and disappeared. 3 days later, Neka was dead. No sickness, no warning. She simply didn't wake up one morning. The village mourned. Adaze wept, not for Neka, but for what it meant. The elders gathered, their faces grave with suspicion. And Obiajulu felt nothing. He stood at Neka's funeral, dressed in his expensive mourning clothes, his face blank. People whispered about his coldness, his lack of tears, but the truth was darker than they knew. Obiajulu couldn't cry, because the night after Neka died, he had found another mountain of gold in his barn. And standing there, staring at the wealth, Obiajulu had felt something terrible bloom in his chest. Relief, not grief, not horror. Relief that the payment had been made, that the shrine was satisfied, that his wealth would continue. "What have I become?" he whispered to himself in the darkness of the barn. But he already knew the answer. The villagers' suspicion grew. It started with whispers, then accusations, then investigations. Chief Okonkwo called a meeting of the elders. They gathered under the great Iroko tree, their faces solemn. Obiajulu's rise was too fast, Elder Namdi said. His wealth came from nowhere, and now 2 deaths in his household within months of each other. It's not natural, another elder agreed. The gods don't bless like this. Something else is at work. Chief Okonkwo nodded slowly. We need the dibia. If there is darkness in Obiajulu's house, we must know. The dibia arrived the next day. He was ancient. No one knew exactly how old. His body was covered in traditional charms, cowrie shells, and animal bones. His dreadlocks were white as clouds, and his eyes seemed to see through the physical world into the spiritual one. When he entered Obiajulu's compound, he stopped immediately. The air around him seemed to vibrate. His breathing quickened. His eyes went wide. This place, he whispered, his voice trembling. This place reeks of blood covenant. Obiajulu tried to smile, tried to appear calm. Dibia, you honor my home with your presence. Please come in. Let me offer you. Silence! The dibia's voice cracked like thunder. He pulled out his divination shells, ancient cowries marked with sacred symbols, and threw them on the ground. The shells landed in a pattern that made the dibia's face go pale. He staggered backward, as if physically struck. You? The dibia pointed a trembling finger at Obiajulu. You made covenant with the shrine of endless wealth. Gasps erupted from the gathered villagers. Chief Okonkwo stood up, his face a mixture of shock and fury. Obiajulu, is this true? Obiajulu's mask of calm finally cracked. I don't know what he's talking about. Don't lie, the dibia shouted. The shells don't lie, the spirits don't lie. You spilled your blood at that cursed shrine, and now your greed has opened a door that will devour this entire village. The crowd erupted in panic and anger. He's cursed us all. His evil is spreading. We must drive him out. But Obiajulu wasn't listening to them. He was staring at Enkem, who stood at the edge of the crowd. The boy's eyes had gone completely black. That night, the worst happened. Enkem's possession became complete. Adais was putting him to bed when the boy suddenly sat up, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet on strings. Mama, he said in a voice that was not his own, a voice layered with thousands of whispers. The shrine is so hungry, Mama, so very hungry. Nkem! Adais grabbed his shoulders. Nkem! Come back to me! Fight it! But the boy's head tilted at an impossible angle, bones cracking. There is no Nkem anymore, only appetite. He lunged at her with inhuman strength. Adizi screamed. Obiajulu burst into the room just in time to see his son, his last remaining son, pinning his mother to the ground, hands around her throat, that terrible voice laughing through the boy's mouth. Nkem, stop! Obiajulu grabbed the boy and threw him off Adais. Nkem's small body hit the wall with a sickening thud, but he stood up immediately, grinning with too many teeth. Father, the demon voice purred, you promised to feed us. You promised. Adazi was sobbing, clutching her throat. And Obiajulu finally broke. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face for the first time since Chukwudi died. What have I done? What have I done? That's when the stranger appeared in the corner of the room. Exactly what you wanted, the stranger said calmly. You wanted wealth. You got it. The shrine simply wanted payment. It's all very fair. This isn't fair, Obiajulu screamed. Take it back. Take all of it. The money, the power, everything. Just give me back my family. The stranger laughed, a sound like breaking glass. It doesn't work that way. You can't unspill blood, Obiajulu. You can't unpay a debt. The covenant is eternal. Then what do I do? Obiajulu begged. How do I save my son? How do I save my wife? The stranger's smile faded slightly. His expression became almost curious. There is one way. Obiajulu looked up, desperate hope in his eyes. Anything. I'll do anything. The dibia was right. You opened a door. And doors work both ways. You can close it, but only with a sacrifice greater than what you've already given. What sacrifice? Obiajulu whispered. The stranger leaned close, his amber eyes glowing. The one who made the covenant must offer himself, completely. You must return to the shrine. You must burn it to ash, and burn yourself with it. Obiajulu's blood went cold. You mean, I have to die? Die. The stranger tilted his head. Death would be mercy. No, Obiajulu, you must be consumed, body and soul. The shrine will devour you completely. You will cease to exist. No afterlife. No ancestors welcoming you. Just nothing. Silence filled the room. Adaeze, still on the floor, looked at her husband with pleading eyes. Nkem stood frozen, the demon inside him watching, waiting. And Obiajulu. Obiajulu looked at his hands, the hands that had spilled his own blood for gold, the hands that had counted cowries while his son's body grew cold, the hands that had chosen wealth over family again and again. And if I do this, his voice cracked, will they be free? Will Nkem be saved? Will the village be safe? The stranger nodded slowly. If your sacrifice is true, if you give yourself willingly, with no reservation, no hesitation, then yes, the door will close. The curse will end. Obiajulu stood up slowly. He looked at Adaeze, the woman who had loved him when he was nothing. He looked at Nkem, the boy who still had a chance at life, and he made his choice. I'll do it, Adaeze gasped. Obiajulu, no, I have to, he said, his voice steady for the first time in months. This is my fault, my greed, my curse. I won't let it destroy anyone else. He turned to the stranger. When? Now, the stranger replied. Before your courage fails. Before the greed whispers again. Obiajulu nodded. He knelt beside Adaeze, cupped her face gently. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything, for the man I became, for the pain I caused. I loved you. I just forgot how. Tears streamed down Adaeze's beautiful face. I know, she whispered back. I know. He kissed her forehead. Then he kissed Nkem, the boy's body still frozen, the demon watching through his eyes. Fight it, my son, Obiajulu whispered. I'm going to free you, I promise. And then, without looking back, Obiajulu walked toward the door. The stranger smiled. Follow me. One last time. They walked through the village in the dead of night. No one saw them. No one heard them. Just two figures moving through the darkness. One living, one something else. As they approached the forest, Obiajulu stopped. He looked back at his compound, at the wealth, at the life he had built on blood and bones, and he felt nothing. No regret, no longing, no greed, just emptiness. I'm ready, he said. Are you? The stranger asked, and for the first time there was no mockery in his voice, only genuine curiosity. Are you ready to give up existence itself? To become nothing? To have no legacy, no memory, no soul? Obiajulu looked at his hands one last time. I stopped existing the moment I spilled my blood at that shrine. Everything since then has been haunting. So yes, I'm ready to stop haunting this world. The stranger nodded slowly. Then let us finish what you started. And they stepped into the forest, into the darkness, into the end. The forest was different this time. When Obiajulu had first walked this path 6 months ago, he had been desperate, hungry, broken by poverty but still clinging to hope. Hope that wealth would fix everything, that money would heal the wounds of a lifetime of humiliation. Now, as he walked the same path toward the shrine, he felt none of that. No hope, no fear, no greed, just acceptance. The trees seemed to know. They bent away from him as he passed, as if even they could sense what was coming. The animals of the forest, the owls, the snakes, the spirits that whispered in the dark, all fell silent. Even the wind held its breath. The stranger walked ahead, his black wrapper flowing like liquid shadow. He didn't speak, didn't turn around, just led the way deeper and deeper into the heart of the forbidden forest. And Obiajulu followed. One last time. The shrine sat exactly as Obiajulu remembered it. Broken, ancient, covered in vines and bones. But something was different now. It was alive. Deep in the forest, where the shrine once stood, only ashes remained. But on quiet nights, when the wind blew just right, villagers swore they could hear a voice, a man's voice, gentle, regretful, peaceful, whispering a warning to anyone who came too close. Choose love over gold, choose family over pride, choose peace over power, or the shrine will call to you, and you will answer, and you will lose everything. And in the shadows of that same forest, far from the ashes, something else stirred. A clay pot. Small, cracked, buried beneath roots and leaves. Waiting. Because greed never truly dies. It just sleeps. Waiting for the next desperate soul. The next hungry heart. The next man who believes that wealth will solve everything. And when that man comes, the shrine will rise again. The clay pot in the center pulsed with a sickly amber glow, like a heartbeat. The bones around the shrine trembled and rattled as if excited. The air itself felt thick, hungry, waiting. The shrine knew he had come, and it was pleased. Here we are, the stranger said, finally turning to face Obiajulu. The place where you sold your soul. And now, the place where you'll give it back. Obiajulu stepped forward, staring at the shrine that had destroyed his life. What do I do? The stranger gestured to a pile of dry wood and kindling arranged around the shrine, wood that hadn't been there a moment ago. First, you must feed the shrine one final time, not with blood from a cut, but with blood from your heart. He handed Obiajulu a long curved knife, traditional, ancient, its blade gleaming with an unnatural sharpness. You must pierce your own chest. Let your blood flow into the pot, and when enough has spilled, you light the fire. Obiajulu took the knife, his hand steady. And then the shrine burns, and you burn with it. The flames will consume everything, the shrine's power, your body, your spirit, your very existence. The door you opened will close. The curse will end. The stranger paused, his amber eyes studying Obiajulu carefully. But you must do it willingly. No hesitation, no regret, no pulling back at the last moment. If you hesitate, the shrine will take you anyway, but your family will remain cursed. Forever. Obiajulu nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? The stranger stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Do you understand that this isn't death, Obiajulu? Death is a transition, a doorway to the ancestors, but what awaits you here is erasure. You will not join your father. You will not watch over your children from the spirit world. You will simply stop existing, as if you never were. For the first time, Obiajulu smiled, a sad, broken smile. Good, because the man I became doesn't deserve to exist. The stranger's expression shifted, something that might have been respect flickering across his face. Then you are ready. But before Obiajulu could move, a voice screamed from the edge of the clearing. Obiajulu! No! He spun around. Adaiz. She burst through the trees, her wrapper torn from running through the forest, her beautiful face streaked with tears and scratches from branches. Behind her stumbled the dibia, breathing hard, leaning on his staff. Adaiz? Obiajulu's voice cracked. What are you doing here? You have to leave. This is the only way. I know what you're planning, she sobbed, rushing toward him. The Dibia explained everything, but I won't let you do this. There has to be another way. There isn't, Obiajulu said gently, holding up his hand to stop her from getting closer. This curse, I created it, and only I can end it. The Dibia stepped forward, his ancient eyes grave. The boy speaks truth, daughter. The covenant is bound to his blood. Only his complete sacrifice can break it. But he'll be erased, Adaze cried. He won't just die. He'll cease to exist. How is that fair? Fair, Obiajulu laughed bitterly. I murdered my own son by choosing gold over his life. I let my second wife die without feeling anything. I became a monster who valued cowries more than the woman I loved. Tell me, Adaz, do I deserve fairness? Adaz was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. You were a good man once. You were kind and hard-working, and you loved us. I was weak, Obiajulu shouted, his voice breaking. I was so weak that one night of humiliation, one moment of envy, was enough to make me sell everything that mattered. I am not a good man, Adaze. I never was. I was just a poor man pretending to have dignity. That's not true. It is. Tears streamed down Obiajulu's face. And the only good thing I can do now, the only thing that will prove I loved you, that I loved our children, is to make sure this curse dies with me. Adaze fell to her knees, broken. The Dibia placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. Let him go, daughter. Let him find his redemption. Obiajulu turned back to the shrine. He raised the knife to his chest, right over his heart. Wait, the stranger said suddenly. Obiajulu paused. Before you do this, I want you to know something. The stranger's form began to shift, to shimmer. His human appearance melted away, revealing something far more ancient underneath. A spirit of pure amber light and shadow, neither good nor evil, simply eternal. I am not a demon, the spirit said in a voice like wind through caves. I am a guardian. I guard the shrine, yes, but my purpose is not to trick men into damnation. My purpose is to test them. Obiajulu's eyes widened. Test? The shrine offers wealth to those who ask, but it also reveals who they truly are. Some men take the wealth and use it wisely, never allowing greed to consume them. They pay the price willingly when it comes, and the cycle ends peacefully. The guardian's eyes glowed brighter. But others like you, Obiajulu. You let the greed take root. You chose gold over love, power over family, and in doing so, you proved what you were always capable of becoming. Obiajulu's hand trembled on the knife. So this was all a test? My son died? For a test? Your son died, the guardian said calmly, because you chose gold after his death. The shrine took him as payment, yes. But you could have stopped there. You could have renounced the wealth that very night. But you didn't. You looked at the blood money, and you took it. The words hit Obiajulu like physical blows, because they were true. All of them. But here, the guardian continued, at the end, you have made a different choice. You have chosen sacrifice over survival, love over greed. And that is why your sacrifice will work. The guardian stepped back. The shrine will burn. The curse will end. Your family will be free, and you... He paused. You will find peace, not in the world of ancestors, not in memory or legacy, but in knowing that in your final moment, you were the man you always should have been. Obiajulu's tears fell freely now. He looked at Adaez one last time. Take care of Nkem. Tell him his father loved him, even when I forgot how to show it. Adaz nodded, unable to speak through her sobs. Obiajulu took a deep breath. And then, without hesitation, he drove the knife into his own chest. Blinding, absolute pain. But Obiajulu didn't scream. He didn't pull the knife out. He pushed it deeper, feeling his heart pierce, feeling his blood begin to flow. He stumbled toward the shrine, each step agony, and fell to his knees before the clay pot. Blood poured from his chest, dark and thick, splashing into the pot. The shrine shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, like the earth splitting. The amber glow intensified, blazing brighter and brighter. Obiajulu's vision blurred, but he kept his hand pressed to his chest, letting the blood flow. For Chukwudi, for Nkem, for Adaz, for everyone I hurt. When the pot was full, when his vision was almost gone, Obiajulu reached for the torch that had appeared beside him. With his last strength, he threw it onto the kindling. The shrine exploded into flames. Fire. Supernatural fire that burned hotter than any earthly flame. It consumed the shrine instantly, the clay shattering, the bones turning to ash, the vines withering and dying, and it consumed Obiajulu. But he didn't scream. As the flames wrapped around him, pulling him apart piece by piece, soul by soul, Obiajulu felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. The greed that had lived in his heart like a parasite, it burned away. The pride, the arrogance, the cruelty, all of it turned to ash. And beneath it all, beneath the monster he had become, Obiajulu found the man he used to be. The man who had loved his wife with his whole heart. The man who had worked honestly, even in poverty. The man who had dreamed of giving his children a better life. That man had been buried under gold and blood. But in the fire, in the final sacrifice, he was reborn. Just long enough to let go. The forest screamed, the ground shook, shadows erupted from the earth, dozens, hundreds of tortured spirits that had been trapped by the shrine for centuries. They swirled around the flames, crying out, and then they dissipated, released, free. The shrine's power shattered like glass, and Obiajulu. Obiajulu smiled one last time. Then he was gone. When the flames finally died, there was nothing left. No shrine, no bones, no clay pot, and no Obiajulu, just ashes and silence. Ada Eze collapsed, her wails echoing through the forest. The Dibia knelt beside her, ancient tears on his weathered face. The guardian stood at the edge of the clearing watching, then slowly he began to fade. "The door is closed," he said softly. "The curse is ended. Go home. Live. Remember him not as a monster, but as a man who found redemption in his final breath." And he was gone. 1 month later, Adaz walked through the village market with Nkem. People greeted her with respect, not because of wealth, but because of what she had endured. As she shopped for yams, she noticed a young man sitting alone at the edge of the market. He was thin, hungry-looking, watching the wealthy merchants with burning, envious eyes. Adaz recognized that look. She had seen it in Obiajulu's eyes. She walked over and sat beside the young man. "I know that hunger," she said gently. "The hunger for more, for respect, for escape." The young man looked at her, surprised. "How did you—" "Because I loved a man who had it," Adaz said, "and it destroyed him. But before he died, he told me something important." She placed a yam in the young man's hands. He said, "Wealth without peace is a prison, and greed is a fire that burns everything you love. Start small, work honest, and never, never sell your soul for gold." The young man stared at the yam, then at her. Who was your husband?" Adaz smiled sadly. "A good man who forgot himself. But in the end, he remembered." She stood and walked away, Nkem's small hand in hers. Behind her, the young man looked at the yam, then at the wealthy merchants, then back at the yam, and he made his choice. He stood, bowed respectfully to Adaz's back, and went to find honest work. The shrine of endless wealth was destroyed, but greed still whispers in the hearts of men. Will you answer when it calls? Obiajulu's story is over, but the warning remains. Some prices are too high to pay. Subscribe for more stories like this.